Have you ever been sitting by the shore, staring out across the horizon, trying to grasp just how endless the deep blue sea really is? Stretching out across an impossible expanse, oftentimes it's difficult to fully comprehend just how deep our oceans really are. And for tens of thousands of years, us humans haven't even begun to scratch the surface. Currently, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do our own oceans, and what lies beneath remains an unsolved mystery. From ancient sunken cities, long-forgotten monuments, and ghost ships that disappeared to mist, here's the 15 most terrifying objects found in the deep sea.
Ships veering to port, go 22 knots, sideswipes the iceberg.
Train graveyard. All right, let's begin with a bizarre tale that left two terrestrial trains somehow sinking off the east coast of the United States. Now, it's anyone's guess how in the world any single locomotive train could have found itself sunken at the bottom of the ocean. But in this strange and unsolved calamity, there isn't just one, but two of them. Just off the coast of Long Branch in New Jersey, a mysterious train wreckage has had both historians and amateur enthusiasts perplexed as to its underlying origins. After all, how do you manage to misplace not one, but two gigantic steam engines?
No record that these locomotives ever existed.
Submerged 90 feet at the bottom of the New Jersey coastline, these two steam locomotives lay undiscovered for just over 100 years, gathering rust in the frigid waters of the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't until 1985, when they were discovered by a scuba diver by the name of Paul Hepler, that their existence finally came to light, and since then, how they arrived there or who even built them has remained a complete and utter mystery. The thing is, these aren't just any locomotives, but instead a rare breed of machinery generally used in train yards for moving other trains, custom built for that exact purpose. Perplexingly, for such a specific locomotive, there are no records of them ever even being built. Still to this day, the origin of this deep-sea train wreckage remains an unsolved mystery, and in all likelihood, we may never know the underlying truth behind the New Jersey wreckage. Now let's get ready for today's missing topic. On the topic of weird sunken wrecks, take a look at this eye-opening photograph. This image was believed to have been captured by a team of professional scuba divers back in 2014 who were exploring the coastline of Melbourne, Florida for wreckage. Ever since it began circulating across the web, from private message boards to scuba diving forums, the people behind the photograph have never actually claimed ownership, but some believe that it's proof of ancient giant beings having once roamed the planet. What do you guys think? Huge hoax? Ancient giants? Or just a cardboard cutout piece of trash? Let us know your thoughts with the hashtag #MissingTopic down below. Before we move on, smash that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell right now. If you don't, a venomous viper will appear in your bed tonight. So do what's best for you. North Korean ghost ships. One of the most terrifying truths about the ocean is how many unfortunate souls have perished out in the endless blue, forever lost to the murky depths after being forced to leave behind the broken vessels that they once traveled in. While the vast majority of these wrecked ships quickly find themselves sinking to the bottom of the ocean, some of them are never released from their fate, eternally bound to roam the seven seas as ghost ships. Now, you may think that ghost ships are old wooden vessels, like the Black Pearl or any other old pirate ship. But the truth is, these ghost ships are also an equally modern phenomenon. One of the most terrifying instances of these modern ghost ships are from North Korea, the rogue, isolated nation that's notoriously been under authoritarian rule since 1948. Every year, dozens of derelict boats from North Korea ominously wash up on the shores of Japan and South Korea, with many of them belonging to North Korean fishermen that have been lost at sea, ultimately succumbing to starvation. While fishing is one of the most dangerous occupations on the planet, it seems that North Korea's lack of safety concerns makes it one of the most terrifying professions imaginable, with many sailors left to face the perils of the ocean with inadequate equipment and damaged ships. In 2018 alone, more than 200 North Korean fishing vessels were found adrift or stranded on beaches across Japan's western shoreline. And every year it seems these vessels return in increasing numbers. Terrifying. Neptune Memorial Reef. On the subject of memorializing those that have lost their lives out in the endless deep blue sea, this next entry is an entire underwater city for the dead. Located around 3 miles off the coast of Key Biscayne in Miami, there exists an underwater cemetery, complete with stone roads, soaring gates, and crumbling ruins in memorial to those that have perished there. At 40 feet below the surface of the sea, the Neptune Memorial Reef was designed by Florida artist Kim Bradell and was opened back in 2007 in sponsorship with the Neptune Society, a cremation company and funeral director based out of Florida. Incredibly, for those that wish to be buried at the bottom of the murky blue, cremated remains are cast into concrete memorials and placed within the sunken necropolis.
The Neptune Memorial Reef was created as a natural habitat for marine organisms to grow.
Left behind for divers to explore in the mysterious and murky wreckage. While it may be pretty unnerving on the surface, it seems to be one of the most thoughtful sunken cities ever constructed. Chuuk Lagoon. While there are plenty of weird places in the world's oceans, it seems that Chuuk Lagoon may be one of the weirdest. This place, previously known as Truk Atoll, is a ring-shaped coral reef located in the central Pacific Ocean, roughly around 1,100 miles from the nearest landmass. Throughout its history, this isolated oceanic anomaly has been the location of numerous naval battles and alleged paranormal mysteries, after the Japanese Navy used the atoll as a military base during World War II. And now, from sunken tanks to human remains, it seems that Chuuk Lagoon may be one of the most haunting undersea graveyards on Earth. Incredibly, it wasn't until 1969 that the true terrors of this underwater necropolis were discovered, when famous French explorer Jacques Cousteau filmed an expedition there. Since then, the terrifying lagoon has become a notorious site for brave divers and researchers, endlessly searching for an answer to this mysterious underwater grave. Sea of Galilee Mystery. Several years ago, evidence of a gigantic stone monument was discovered at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel, and since then archaeologists across the planet have become utterly baffled by their design, raising many questions as to who or what created them. Some believe it to have been constructed by the mythical Nephilim, an ancient race of giants, while others believe it to be a structure used for sacrificial purposes as the remains of a long-forgotten civilization. This mysterious cone-shaped object was discovered over 30 feet beneath the water by divers back in 2003. Strangely enough, the sheer size of this object is staggering, with a diameter greater than the length of a Boeing 747. Built purely out of basalt rock, it's twice the size of Stonehenge in England and weighs an estimated 60,000 tons. Although scientists are still struggling to establish any more evidence about this mysterious and expansive object, estimates potentially place the structure as being up to 12,000 years old. Whatever the case, this long sunken structure is evidence of an advanced and well-organized society, and its origin may very well change the way we look at the history of our species. The Mary Celeste. While the ghost ships of North Korea may be terrifying enough, one of the most legendary lost vessels in history is the Mary Celeste, a mysterious merchant brigantine that was discovered adrift and deserted in the Atlantic Ocean on December 4, 1872. Found abandoned near the Azores Islands, the Mary Celeste was believed to have departed New York City on November 7th, and when she was discovered adrift less than a month later, she was still filled with food and enough provisions to last the crew for several more months. Strangely enough, none of the crew were to be found, and their personal belongings were left undisturbed, almost as if someone had snapped their fingers and they'd suddenly disappeared. Built in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, and first launched under British registration in 1861, the Mary Celeste has enjoyed a relatively successful career as a merchant vessel, and the nature of her sudden and mysterious abandonment remains to be one of the strangest in maritime history. Pretty spooky, right? Thonis Heraklion. Ghost ships are one thing, but how about entire underwater ghost cities? Thousands of years ago, this ancient city stood as the gateway to the prestigious kingdom of Egypt and bridged the gap between the civilization of the pharaohs and the ancient Greeks. Founded around 2,700 years ago, it was believed to have been one of the most important ports of the ancient world. However, it didn't stand long before it fell to ruin at the hands of the perils of the ocean. After a disastrous earthquake resulting in the region of Thonis Heraklion collapsing into the ocean, the city itself was suddenly submerged beneath the waves, forgotten to history for several thousand years. However, in the early 2000s, a group of divers that were working off the Egyptian coast found a large fragment of rock at the bottom of the seabed, and after bringing it to land, they discovered that it was the head of a gigantic ancient statue, remarkably still intact. As they continued searching, the team eventually unearthed 6 more pieces of the statue, and after an extensive excavation, the ruins of an entire temple was discovered. As it turned out, the entire city of Heraklion has been rediscovered after being submerged beneath the waves of the Mediterranean for thousands of years, and it seems that its true secrets are still yet to be revealed. HMS Titanic. When it comes to the secrets of the 7 seas, it would be difficult to find any underwater wreckage more iconic than the Titanic disaster in the 20th century. We all know the tale, right? Over a century ago, on April 14, 1912, the maiden voyage of the Titanic tragically collided with a fateful iceberg, plunging its 2,224 passengers and crew into the ice-cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean. By the next morning, over 1,500 people had tragically lost their lives, and it became the biggest maritime disaster in recorded history. However, it wasn't until 1985 that the Titanic wreckage was finally rediscovered, and it took a voyage into the endless ocean depths to do so. Now, the wreck of the Titanic sits in 2 pieces over 370 miles south of Newfoundland on the eastern coast of Canada. While the ship's distinctive bow, as well as many of the ship's interiors, are strangely well preserved, the ocean is doing its best to completely destroy the Titanic wreck. Collapsed, corroded, and encrusted, down to a cocktail of natural forces eating away at the ship's hull, the Titanic is being eaten alive by seawater. Tragically, scientists estimate that the Titanic wreckage may be completely devoured by as early as 2030, meaning that this historical treasure trove could be lost forever, reclaimed by the same ocean that destroyed it. CAS 11. While we've seen our fair share of terrifying deep-sea ghost ships already, few of them can compare to the unfathomable mystery of the CAS 11 and what's been dubbed Australia's most infamous ghost ship mystery. On April 18, 2007, the crew of a surveillance helicopter spotted an abandoned vessel drifting in the sea, almost 100 miles off the coast of Queensland, Australia. From a distance, they could see that the 32-foot catamaran had been badly damaged, and the sails seemed to be shredded to ribbons too. Strangely, when the rescue vessel arrived, they found that the ship was set up for a meal, with food and utensils still set out on the table. Oddly enough, the engine was also running, and the onboard computers were still turned on and functioning. Upon further inspection, they also found that fishing lines were still being cast from the boat and that the crew's personal belongings remained completely undisturbed. To this day, authorities are unable to determine what happened to the CAS 11, and the fate of its crew has never been discovered. Grenada's underwater figures. Sure, deep sea can be terrifying, but strangely enough, it can also be oddly beautiful. Built back in May of 2016, the Molineux Underwater Sculpture Park is a collection of ecological underwater contemporary art located in the Caribbean Sea, just off the west coast of Grenada in the West Indies. As the brainchild of British sculptor Jason DeCaires Taylor, it's considered to be the world's first underwater sculpture park, and the Underwater Museum aims to engage local people with the underwater environment that surrounds it, using sculptures which are lifelike casts of the local community. The thing is, despite it having its own artistic importance to the Grenadian society, the sculpture park also serves an incredibly practical purpose. These sculptures act as an aid to relieve the pressure on natural reefs, serving as a safety barrier to the underwater area, which has since become a popular tourist attraction for scuba divers and explorers. Sure, it may be strangely beautiful, but those statues are pretty darn lifelike. Baiae, the Forbidden City. Did you ever know that the ancient Romans had their own version of the Las Vegas Strip? Sounds awesome, right? Well, it's also kinda haunted. After being lost for more than 1,700 years, a team of divers that were exploring Italy's west coast revealed one of the most extraordinarily preserved ancient cities submerged beneath the waves. The site, known as the Baiae, was considered to be the Las Vegas for the super-rich of the 1st century's ancient Rome, and archaeologists were astonished to discover evidence of sprawling mansions dotted across the underwater landscape. Originally, it's believed that the city of Baiae resided inland, but as the ages passed, the majority of the city was lost to the ocean, as volcanic activity caused the coastline to retreat more than 1,300 feet towards land. The result was the entire city being engulfed by the ocean, swallowed for an age until its rediscovery in the 18th century. Incredibly, most parts of the city are remarkably intact, even after 1,700 years of salt water. There are even legends that the entrances to the river Styx is buried somewhere beneath its mosaic floors. Spooky. The Somme. While the ocean is littered with countless terrifying vessels, the next entry is a different kind of ghost story. Back in 2016, Russia hoped to smooth over old Soviet tensions with Sweden by engaging in a joint operation to unearth a lost submarine that had sank over 100 years ago. However, the terrifying thing was that the Soviet Somme-class submarine was still equipped with a payload of deadly explosives. After sending a team of divers down to survey the elusive vessel, which had previously washed to the shores of Sweden on several occasions, the divers made the discovery that the vessel had remained completely intact, with no visible damage to the hull. The submarine, named Catfish, measured in at 66 feet long and was the first of its kind to have been made in St. Petersburg. Equipped with one machine gun and one 15-inch torpedo tube, the vessel was launched in 1904, and it made up one of 7 flagship Soviet submarines. In an incredible turn of terrible luck, all 7 of them ended up sinking, and only 2 of them have ever been recovered. Yikes. SS Thistlegorm. Sure, the Somme may be a terrifying reminder of sunken Soviet weaponry, but the SS Thistlegorm is an underwater military wreckage like no other. As the legend goes, the SS Thistlegorm was a flagship British merchant vessel that was famously sunk by the German Luftwaffe in the early hours of October of 1941, and it's since become one of the most notorious deep-sea diving sites on the planet. Located just off the coastline of Crete, the SS Thistlegorm was originally bound for the port of Alexandria in Egypt, but its final voyage spelled ruin for the ship after it was blown to smithereens by nearly 3 tons of highly explosive bombs. Tragically, the launch was a critical hit, and after it had exploded on a cargo haul of ammunition, the SS Thistlegorm quickly sank to the bottom of the ocean floor. Now, only the ghostly reminder of its perfectly preserved military cargo remains, and an eerie underwater display of a long-forgotten era. Gulf of Aqaba Military Museum. Alright, we may have seen some sunken Soviet submarines, but this next underwater military wreckage is a different kettle of fish. Back in 2019, the Middle Eastern country of Jordan unveiled its latest museum dedicated to its military history. However, there was a small catch. You'd need a scuba certification to get to see it. Located just off the coast of Aqaba in the Red Sea, the Jordanian military sank several high-powered components, including tanks, helicopters, and troop carriers next to a failing coral reef. The objective was to provide tourists and scuba diving enthusiasts with an underwater attraction, while hoping to allow the reef to recover. Located more than 90 feet beneath the ocean surface, the dive site includes 19 outdated military pieces, and it plans to sink even more if the museum proves a success. Just leave out the explosives, yeah? Flooded Chinese city. And for our final entry, what better terrifying tale to end on than with the ancient flooded Lion City of China. Commonly referred to as China's answer to Atlantis, Lion City is a sunken abode located at the bottom of the Qinzhou Lake in China's Zhejiang province. The once thriving city was known for its beautiful and complex architecture and was revered all across the Lower Kingdom for hundreds of years. Despite its reputation, now it resides over 100 feet below the lake's surface, forgotten for generations in its sunken abode. Incredibly, unlike most ancient cities, its ruin wasn't at the hands of some geological extinction event, but instead at the hands of humans. Despite being a beautiful ancient relic, Lion City was flooded intentionally in order to design and build the hydroelectric station known as the Jinan Dam. As China rapidly grew, they figured that they could sacrifice some of their ancient history in order to pave the way to a new technological future. Hey, let's just hope it's not cursed. Well, there we have it, the 15 most terrifying objects found in the deep sea. What you guys think? Let us know your thoughts down below. As always, thanks for sticking around all the way until the end. You've been watching Missing Files. See you next time.